Hi class, for our next task, we'll be looking at the program.cs file, our Working with File Systems project, and we're going to be running the Work with Drives method. The Work with Drives method, as you can see, starts out by outputting a heading, and then it goes into a for each loop, and it uses the drive info class to get information about all of the hard drives that are connected to the system. And if the drive is ready, meaning it's available for input and output, we'll output a data line for that drive, including the name of the drive, the type, the format, the size, and available free space. If the drive is not ready, we'll say that there's no access to that drive. Now, in order to run this method, we need to update our main. It's down at the bottom, and I'm going to comment out the output file system info method that we looked at in our last video, and uncomment the work with drives method and run our project. My system will have different hard drives, of course, than yours, but you can see on mine that I have a C and D drive that are both using the NT file system for Windows. I have an E drive that's using exFAT, it's a Linux partition, and another NTFS drive that's used for Windows, and then I have some removable drives that have been connected to the system in the past but aren't there right now. We were able to access information like how big the drive is in total and how much space is free. So great information for us in working with our drives method. The next method we'd like to run is working with directories. I'll uncomment that method, and I'll press F12 to locate it within my code. And then we can evaluate this method to see what it's doing. We're creating a variable called new folder, and we're using this combine method. Combines 4 strings into a path. Well, that's very handy. And in this combine method, the 4 strings that we're looking for are the folder, which we're going to use the get folder path method for and find the path to our personal folder. Then we're going to add the folder code, chapter 9, and new folder to that information. So that's going to create a new folder within our personal folder, and I think mine was my documents folder, wasn't it? And then we'll output a line telling the user we're working with that, and then we'll check for that new folder to make sure it exists. And if it does not exist, we will create it, actually either way, and then we'll check again. We'll delete it and check again to see if it exists. So just a little bit of working with folders. So we see how we can use the create directory method to create a folder, and the delete command recursively to delete the folder and all its contents. I'm going to run this project now. And we should see that we're working indeed in that personal folder that we had seen earlier. And we're looking at this new folder. It does not exist, so it's created. And then it does exist. Now, I want to confirm that the thing exists, then press enter. Okay, so I'm going to go to File Explorer. And this is on my D drive. So I'll go to this PC, my D drive, and then Renee Riley, Documents, and I should find a code Chapter 9, my new folder. So indeed it got created. I'll leave this over here to the side, press enter, and now it should be gone. Sure enough, it's gone. If I look in my documents folder, the new code folder though does still exist. We just deleted the new folder, so notice we would actually need to recursively delete from that code folder if we were going to delete all of the new ones we created. Their assumption was that the code folder and the chapter 9 folder were already there. They weren't for me, so they got created. So we could handle that however we wanted. But we see that we can create a new folder. So if we want to create a folder to create some files in, that's a possibility. Then, speaking of files, let's do a little bit of work with files. I'm going to comment out my working with directory method and uncomment my work with files method. Press F12 to go find it. It's body in my code. Sorry, I pressed the wrong thing there. F12, there it is. In our method, we're going to start out using that combine method again to create a full folder name. And in our chapter 9 folder, we're going to create a new folder called output files, which is a common thing for us to need to do in our code. We'll create that directory, and then we're going to create a text file and a backup file within that directory, again using that awesome combine method. We'll output that we're working with that file, check to see if the text file exists, and then create it. We'll write a line to it and close it, and now check to see if it exists again. We can copy it to a destination file, which will be our backup file, and then we'll check to see if our backup file exists. Once we've created a backup, we can safely delete our original text file, and then we'll read from our backup file and make sure we see that data that we should see in it. And then we can look at some path information and some file information about our path and file. Let's run this. So the first thing I want to do is check to see if my new backup file exists. We were in my D drive. Chapter 9 file, we created the output files folder, and indeed my backup file and my text file have both been properly created. I'll read the contents of the backup file. It's had the text file copied into it. We'll look at all of our different output file names. We even got a random file name to create a temporary file. So we have some great file access code examples in this project thanks to our textbook. So I hope you enjoy working with your files and folders. You can find out a lot of information that you can't really necessarily find out easily otherwise, in addition to being able to manage files and folders correctly for your users.